Next now we have Sinead Holland from the Laois Local Studies who will speak a bit about her work in the local study group.
Good evening, my name is Sinead and as several people have said, I work in the library service. I worked with Mary for years, so I know a bit about the OD plan. I'd like to begin by congratulating Tom on producing what is probably the best local and family history publication I have ever had the pleasure of reading. When I first read the title of this book, I was very impressed. I thought it was really ambitious and I hoped that it would do exactly what it said on the tin. Having read it over the last week, I can say with confidence that it really doesn't disappoint, and I would recommend everybody read it. When I spoke with Tom a few weeks ago, we agreed that a family history will inevitably incorporate a local history because people and place are intertwined. It's impossible to tell the story of people in any meaningful way without looking at the local political, economic and social environment in which they lived. One of the great strengths of this publication is that it begins by providing a comprehensive explanation of the context in which generations of the OD family lived their lives. In just 30 pages, Tom clearly explains the historical backdrop to life in Laois over a 100-year period. By outlining the major social, political and economic changes that impact and shaped the lives of Irish people, Tom enables us to fully understand the lives of successive generations of the OD family. Armed with an understanding of the constraints and opportunities faced by the early ODs, the book then leads us through generations of their lives, from the unnamed Limerick ancestor who relocated to the Balnakill area to the current generation. So several chapters are dedicated to the life and times of Edward Day, who I think was a legendary figure in the OD family lore. He was born before Catholic emancipation in 1823 and lived through the famine and witnessed huge change in his lifetime. But by the time he died in 1911, he had connected his family to 6 different farms in the Ballyroan and Leaks district. Tom attributes Edward Day's success to being, I think he said, the right man in the right place at the right time. Well, he was certainly a man who was alert, skilled and hard-working, and he had a remarkable ability to recognise, seize and build on the opportunities that came his way. And his descendants have benefited not only from his material achievements, but from the trade skills and knowledge that he passed on to his family. So every branch of the OD family is given their place in this story. Their triumphs and tragedies are described in equal measure, capturing all aspects of life with honesty and understanding. The OD family are blessed to have a book like this to pass on to future generations. Most families, if they're lucky, have a family tree, a dry list of names and dates that tell us nothing about the people they represent. Tom's work is a family narrative that gives life to those who lived long ago. Its value is future-proofed by including enough historical context to allow future generations, people far away in space and time, to fully understand the lives of their ancestors. The book is so easy to read that you could mistakenly assume it was easy to write. However, a book like this is the result of years and years of research, hard work and discipline, and the extended OD family are very fortunate to have a family member with the talent and dedication to see it through. But the ODs are not the only ones to benefit from this book. As previously mentioned, it is as much a local history as a family history. The introduction that provides the historical backdrop to the OD story is the context for all our stories, not only in Abbeyleix and Ballyroan, but in other parts of Laois and beyond. It's also a fantastic account of Irish rural life and the development of agriculture in Laois and Ireland over 300 years. I'll conclude by saying that this book will become an essential read, not just for the ODs and the people of this area, but for anyone interested in life in Laois from 1700 to 2000. in the local studies section, where I had the pleasure of first meeting Tom, I would meet people every day, either in person or through email and letters, who are searching for their Irish roots. And I witnessed how difficult it is for them to connect with ancestors whose lives were shaped by a natural and social environment of which they know nothing. Most of them are coming from, America, Canada, Australia. This book will help them to understand and connect to their ancestors, and in doing so will extend to other families the rich sense of heritage enjoyed by the ODs. Once again, congratulations to Tom on the publication of this meticulously researched, brilliantly developed and beautifully written book. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we're all here tonight, can you please give a warm welcome to the man himself, Mr. Tom Carroll.
Good evening, everybody. I join with the previous speakers in welcoming you to this book launch in Ballyrowan. It's appropriate as it should be here because Ballyrowan itself and the surrounding countryside around here, I'm speaking about Abbey Weeks, down to Ballynakill, across the Spink, over to Cullen Mountain, all of that sort of district is the focal point of this book. I'll try to tell you something about the book without actually revealing what is in the book, because I would like you to enjoy your reading of it. I'm indebted to many people who helped me to construct this book, and I thank them for their cooperation and contributions over many years while I was researching and writing the book. So this book, in many ways, it's not just my book, it is your book also, because your fingerprints are on it, and you will see that, you will see your fingerprints when you read it. In it I acknowledge the people concerned, so I do not propose to start naming names here. However, a number of people did die while I was in the process of developing this book, and I would like to recall their memory here this evening. First of all, I would like to refer to Jimmy and Margaret O'Dea in Upper Cribben, and I had many discussions with them, and I recorded a very long interview with Jimmy, I think it was in 2012, which was very, very revealing, giving his assessment of the Dee history. Then there was Ned O'Dea, brother of John's here. John was very helpful to me in the early years. Mick O'Dea of Cashel, Michael Scully, Eileen's husband here, and my own sister, Mary O'Dwyer in Tipperary. So, Gunina Dia, Troker, Ellen Anmaka. The question I'm often asked is, why did you write the book? I wrote it to illuminate the past accurately, before memory of it disappeared in the winds of change that are always blowing, because culture changes and tradition dies. And that is the challenge to preserving both local history and family history. Change is constant. I think that's the thing that's really motivated me, looking at how society changes, how the economy changes, and so on. And just to give you some examples of changes that we have seen in our own time, even perhaps in the last 20 years. You take, say, the information revolution, computers, the internet, emails, texting, social history, mobile phones. We've also had in very recent times, some of us would never have anticipated the COVID virus, and that will have long-lasting changes on how we live our lives and how we work. Many more people are working from home now, that would never have been envisaged. The climate crisis, whether we like it or not, it is existential. it is with us here and now, and we see how it is affecting other countries. I often read about nomadic farmers down in Africa, and I'm looking at the carcasses of their animals and so on, because they no longer have the grass that they were used to having. It really is frightening, and we have to play our part. And then, very recently, we had a tragic war in Europe, unspeakable savagery. And so I just give those few examples of the kind of change that's going on in the world, and why, therefore, we need to capture what is going on at a particular point in time. So this is the background to the book's combination of local history and O'Dean family history. As Sinead has just said there, she's emphasised that particular point, the combination of local history and family history, because they are intertwined. And there are two parts to the book. In summary, I wrote the book in order to have a record of bygone times and a way of life that is no more. It opens an ancestral window to how life was lived before, during and after the Great Famine of 1845-52. And as such, the book will resonate with rural communities across Ireland. So it is not just about Ballarone and this district, but it's emblematic in many ways of what happens in rural communities throughout our country. In researching the book as far as possible, the stories of the book are underpinned by evidence. Assembling the evidence brought me on a long virtual journey beyond Ireland, and it is interesting how a family and their connections as they grow into adults and so on extend out to various countries. And that virtual journey of research brought me to Algeria, Australia, England, France, Morocco, Switzerland and the United States. And one of my cousins is watching in on this tonight from just outside Geneva, just as an example. And so, as I said, the book is in two parts. Part one is about the Dees. They migrated from Limerick to Laois in the 1700s, and that's why I chose the period, the 3-century period, 1700 to 2000. So part one outlines that particular period, and it is difficult for us here now in 2022 to understand, to get our heads around the world of our ancestors here in Laois through those 3 centuries, simply because so much change has occurred. That period witnessed the advent of canals, steamships, railways, electricity, the reaper and binder, the motor car, the tractor, radio and television. And that's just to name a few of the innovations during that period that transformed people's lives and their livelihoods. The big forces that drove the circumstances of people's lives were political, economic, social and technological. And I'd like just to touch on those forces for a few moments. The dominant force through most of that period was landlordism and its associated insecurity of land tenure. And that was dominant up to the 1800s. And then the power balance began to shift from the landlord to the tenant farmer. And land reform became a very big issue really after the famine. And in many ways the Great Famine, because of its impact, was the beginning of the end of landlordism here in Ireland. And landlordism in a way was kind of finally put to bed in 1903 with the Windham Act. I want to mention a few words also about the Great Famine. When I think of the Great Famine today, I can see some parallels with what is going on in Ukraine. I see excess states, as we had them in the famine, as a result of famine and famine-related diseases. About 1 million people died from starvation and famine-related diseases. And another 2.5 million people emigrated between 1845 and 1855. So I do see these parallels. If you look at Ukraine today, the numbers of people that are being killed, and even the far greater numbers of people that are being displaced. And we have about 30,000 of those people who've had to flee to our own country. Then the other big event during that period was, of course, our independence in 1922. Then economic planning and modernization began to gain momentum from the late 1950s. And a big turning point, a big point of inflection in our history was Ireland's membership of the European Economic Community, now the European Union, from 1973. So that's really what part one of the book is about. It's really setting the context, the backdrop to part two of the book, which is about people and places. And in it we are introduced to several generations of the extended OD family, whose ancestors migrated from County Limerick to Laois in the 1700s. The profiles of individuals illustrate the diversity of their journeys through life in Ireland and abroad. Life is there with all its ups and downs. And my approach, as I said earlier, was simply to be very careful about finding all of the evidence, and then when I had the evidence, be able to stand over it and then tell the story as it was. Through the circumstances of their lives, we gain a real insight into what life was like in Laois and in exile through those 3 centuries, 1700 to 2000. Thus, the book is an authentic community record of those bygone times whose culture and traditions are no more. They are dead. In addition, although the stories are particular to the extended OD family, many of the stories will be representative of the lived experience of other families whose origins are in rural Ireland. I've been looking back now in this talk so far. Now I want to look to the future, and I'm sure you're all glad to know that I'm coming to the conclusion. And you might remember a few months ago, I think it was in April, many of you would have filled in the census form, the census of 2022. And the final part of that census form had a title on it called Time Capsule. And the central statistics that you weren't obliged to fill in that particular part of the form, but the Central Statistics Office encouraged people to do so, so that your generations, when those census forms are opened 100 years from now, your descendants, historians and other people would get some sort of sense of what life was like. Now, as author of the book, I am obliged by law to lodge a copy of it with the National Library of Ireland and with some other institutions. So I decided when I was filling in my family census form in Limerick, I said, wouldn't it be a nice idea to tell the reader, whoever opens these forms in 21-22, you can, if you want to know something about Ballyrone and its history and the wider period, there is a book in the National Library, we gave them the reference, and I hope, therefore, that this book will live on and perpetuate the memory of Ballyrone and this district and its people 100 years from now. Thank you very much.